12.2, day number 4, example 1b. For these problems, we are taking the limit as x approaches either positive or negative infinity. In this case, we're going to do some direct substitution with this negative infinity in for the x's in this problem. When I do that, I would have 2 times negative infinity to the 4th plus negative infinity to the 3rd minus 6. And what we said in the last problem is when you take a look at the terms that you have, in this case we have 3 terms. We have in this first term a negative infinity raised to the 4th power, in the next term a negative infinity raised to the 3rd power, and then just our number 6. This highest power of infinity from this first term is so much bigger than the others that we can exclude those. We don't even need to write those down technically. You can just plug in your positive or negative infinity in for wherever your highest power of x is. That's usually going to be your first term. So we can exclude these. Our first term in this problem is 2 times negative infinity to the 4th. If you did evaluate that, we would have, using PEMDAS, negative infinity to the 4th power. So we're going to have 2 times negative infinity to the 4th power. Well, if you have a negative raised to an even power, negative infinity in this case raised to the 4th, that is going to give you a positive answer. And infinity to the 4th power, that would be infinity times infinity times infinity times infinity. That's going to be a super, super big number, and the biggest number that we know, if we write it out, is infinity. 2 times infinity. Well, if infinity is the biggest number and you multiply it by 2, that's still the biggest number. So your final answer for this problem is infinity. Again, when you go through and you're plugging in positive or negative infinity using one of our limits into a polynomial, your final answer should be positive or negative infinity. As far as the work goes on here, in this first step, we ignored these last 2 terms. So again, I wouldn't even have to write those down, and at a minimum, what I would need to see from you for work on a test or a quiz situation is this. You only need to show me the work where you're plugging positive or negative infinity into your highest power of x. The other terms are going to be 0, and you don't need to write those in. So this would be an appropriate amount of work for a problem like that. I have one more of those where we're working with our polynomials. So this is letter C. And we're going to do the limit as x approaches negative infinity of 6x to the 5th power minus x squared plus 8. So doing this the most efficient way possible, I'm going to take negative infinity here, and I'm going to use direct substitution and plug that in for all of the x's, but I recognize that with our terms that we have here, the only one that I really need to show work on is the largest power. These other ones, when I plug in negative infinity in for the x's in the other terms, because the powers of x's there are so much smaller, this is the only one that matters. These other ones are going to be very small compared to this one and can just be ignored. So I'm going to have a 6, and we had an x to the 5th power, and now in place of that x, I'm going to substitute in negative infinity. From there, you should just evaluate using PEMDAS. If you have negative infinity raised to the 5th power, well, if you have a negative raised to an odd power, your final answer is going to be negative. So we're going to end up with 6 times a negative number, and it would be infinity to the 5th, except infinity and infinity to the 5th, they're both the biggest numbers we can get. So we want to include our sign there, which would be a negative infinity. Our sign, which would be a negative, and then infinity to the 5th, we can just write that as infinity. And what we have, to finish this up, we have 6 times negative infinity. We have a positive times a negative, so our answer is going to be negative this time. And 6 times infinity, that's still infinity. So a negative infinity is your final answer on that. So on your assignment for 12.2 day 4, you're going to have some problems in there where you're going to be plugging positive or negative infinity into a polynomial. In those sorts of problems, You just need to take your positive or negative infinity, and you need to plug that into whatever your highest power of x is, that term, and then simplify that term down until you just end up with a positive or a negative infinity for your final answer.